Now, this video is partially a response, shout out, even tribute to Ron at Classic Model Trains. I love his channel, it's superb, and at the moment he just finished a project of building the layout of his childhood dreams, which was based on a track plan using Tyco products. The video is incredibly enjoyable and entertaining, like all his videos, and very useful. You learn things. Even if you're not interested in certain scales like Lionel, which is unheard of here in Ireland, they're very interesting to watch him repair those kind of models. Now, what I really loved about this latest project of building his dream childhood layout was that he did an awful lot of myth busting, and the channel has a lot of that in general. And it's great to see this finally challenged because there are sort of like unwritten commandments within the hobby, and I've been doing this for 40 odd years since I was a teenager, a young teenager. No, since I was a preteen. And these things came up again and again. They're these self appointed sort of vanguards who whip out these arbitrary rules in a very kind of dogmatic way, and it often puts people off getting into the hobby or doing the hobby. Oh, there's a character that Harry Enfield did on his old show, like, oh, you don't want to do that, and it's just this intrusive guy in the suburbs who would just like find fault with something everyone did. And if it's the person is happy, leave them alone. It works. Now, I've written out a list of 7 things over the years that are basically these tropes, these rules within the hobby. And I'm not saying they're wrong, but I'm going to challenge them in that they're not as bad as people make them out to be, and in many cases they're not bad at all. And they exist mainly as a kind of a class system snobbery within the hobby, that people who have a certain longevity in the hobby, and especially deeper pockets than others, can stand there and pontificate about how they're doing the hobby is wrong. Now, the first one of these that I would like to bust, that brass track is bad track. This is not true that brass track is somehow a terrible system for running trains on. The metal is prone to dirt more than nickel silver. This is not true at all. I have Fleischmann turnouts points on my layout that were built in the 1960s, and they are superb. They don't have any conductivity problems. They're as easy to clean as the nickel silver track, and they're also stronger. I think the metal that was used in brass back then is actually a stronger metal than nickel silver that came along later, which is basically, I think, just steel that's been coated, or other metals coated in nickel silver have been plated. The brass track, it doesn't seem to wear down as much. It lasts longer. You can run trains on it for years and years and years, and because of the strength of the brass, it doesn't wear down. I have seen exhibition layouts in Germany built with 1960s Fleischmann brass track that are still in use. They're still running in the clubs to this day. No problem, and they've been upgraded to DCC and everything. And the tracks and the turnouts and everything are running as good as the day they were laid in the 60s. And this is not just like high-end stuff like, well, Fleischmann is perceived and seen as high-end German engineering. I would also apply that to the Atlas brass tracks that were made in America. I've got quite a few Atlas number 6 turnouts from the brass era. Again, not a problem. They work fine. They work fine. I've yet to see this great calamity that they're somehow supposed to be responsible for. That you must tear up all the brass track on your layout and instantaneously replace it with nickel silver. I disagree. Steel track is terrible. I totally am down with the concept that steel track is, yes, it works, but it'll be always prone to corrosion, especially in damp climates. So that's the first one. Brass track is not bad track. 2. Even light abrasives for track cleaning are bad news. Again, yes, if you hit it with a piece of high grit sandpaper, you're going to wear down and create deep scratches in the rails. But light abrasive cleaners like the Bright Bite cleaner or the Pico track cleaner, used sparingly, is still the best way to get your tracks and your trains running again by getting the conductivity running. Now, there's a theory that it leaves microscopic scratches in the rail surface, and these microscopic scratches affect conductivity. Well, they don't if you clean your track regularly. And do you know the easiest way to clean your track is? Run your trains. This is why running trains on your layout is the best way to keep your track clean. And light abrasives can be used sparingly. There's no problem with them. Use them sparingly now and again. Don't be hitting them with heavy sanding blocks. Clean them all the time. You can clean your track with even things like cotton soft baby wipes, the alcohol types. Just clean the rails with them. You're you're always going to be cleaning your track, and there's a whole array of scientific processes applied to this now. It's almost become a science in itself. Your Bright Boy or your Pico track cleaning abrasive pad is fine. Just don't go to town, and you'll run trains no problem. The microscopic scratches of the track tops is another completely overblown, anywhere near the problem it's supposed to be. 3. Pancake motors are terrible. This is another one that it depends on the manufacturer, and a lot of people will have bad experiences with them. Now, in America, pancake motors have a pretty bad name, mainly because of things like the Tyco Power Torque and the Bachmann pancake motor. Now, the issue with them is that they were often made with poor components, particularly the Bachmann one. The gears broke, but when they work, they work. And the Bachmann is probably a bit too small, so it makes servicing difficult. The Power Torque requires a lot of cleaning, and this is what gave them a bad name. Now, in Europe, it's very different. Fleischmann make a pancake motor, did make a pancake motor, that was as good as anything with a flywheel. It's an incredible motor. And it was considered the best motor in the world, and it ran a single truck with a pancake motor because of the size of the motor and it made of metal. It created an almost internal flywheel effect, as well as the fact that it was a self-lubricating because of a pad that held oil on the motor that would actually lubricate it. And these were superb. These are superb. If you have them today, you'll have no trouble with them, and they clean very, very easily. Merklin, if you do either the AC or the DC Hamo pancake motors, are also superb. They also have the brush. They have two brushes inside them. One is a standard carbon brush, and the other is a mesh brush that cleans the motor as it spins. And you can actually fit a lot of these metal cleaning brushes into a lot of other pancake motors, and it will scrape the carbon off the surfaces of the motor in order to keep them clean. So they've been thought about. Now, even the Hornby Ringfield motor and the Lima pancake motor, especially, when serviced and cleaned, will work fine. Especially the Lima one, which is a pretty incredible motor. It's mostly made of plastic and only metal where it needs to be metal, and it's impossible to break almost. You nearly have to take a hammer to it. And I've found ones and been given ones that have been in sheds for years, covered in everything, and literally a quick cleanup, and they're running as good as new. And they have very good gearing in them that's not prone to breaking. So pancake motors are not terrible. Even the ones you think are terrible, such as the Power Torque and the Bachmann version. In fact, I've got a video on this channel where I put a Relco cleaner and new magnets on an old Tyco Power Torque locomotive, and I got it down to a crawl. So that's subjective too. Also, I think many of the old Power Torque motors, the magnets are not very good. You can easily replace them with cheap neodymium magnets that you can actually put in there instead. Make your own array of magnets by buying small ones, and that will give it extra power also. 4. Tail chaser loops. 4. Tail chasing layouts are boring. These are the layouts where you basically have circles and the trains run around on it. The prevailing wisdom, quote unquote, is that these are boring. They're not boring. I've built every kind of layout going: tail chasers, end to end, switching, shunting layouts, and I always come back to the tail chaser. And I'll give you two reasons. Yes, I understand the attraction of a switching or a shunting layout. It's actually like almost like a game, a puzzle, where you have to load wagons or cars into different sidings and everything, and that's great. That's good. But sometimes, most times, when you had a hard day at work, you want to come home and you just want to sit there in front of your layout, turn on the power, and watch a train or two running around in a circle while you have a beer, a glass of wine, or a coffee, and just chill out. And it's actually a beautiful thing. It can be very, very relaxing, almost meditative, especially if you have trains or your passenger cars have lights inside them, and you're watching them going by. It can be quite a beautiful experience in terms of how relaxing it can be. And especially if you have good trains, good locomotives, you can bring them down to a very slow speed. Remember, you make your layout bigger also by slowing down your trains. And if something takes 30 seconds to go past your eyes, if you can make it happen in 60 seconds, you've made your layout ostensibly bigger. And then also, you can put scenery behind it, and you can get lost in this world. Now, I know, I'm not putting down the switching or end-to-end layouts because I think they're pretty cool too as well. But I'm just saying that tail chasing layouts are not boring. They just are not. 5. Tight curves should always be avoided. Now, there's a couple of ways of looking at this. Yeah, I know you get less derailments on long passenger cars when you have wide curves, but many of us don't have houses or basements or spare rooms that big. Now, the overhang of passenger cars on tight curves, over the years, this has been a problem. Markland back in the day created the 1/100 linear scale, where it was HO except for its length was compressed. And this other was followed by just about every other manufacturer everywhere in the world. And it's fine, it's okay, but when you put really long locomotives on with these short passenger cars, say like an American E loco, like an E8, and then put it on with these shorty cars, it looks weird. The locomotive being the same length or longer than the passenger cars. So I don't have a problem with tight curves. In fact, there's lots of ways to hide tight curves and not see the overhang. You can put shrubbery and bushes strategically placed so they kind of mask or hide or take the emphasis away from the tight curves. You can put fences up, strategically placed buildings, and so on. And another thing I found with tight curve layouts is that when you have a double track line, two trains running in either directions, it's best to move the inner loop away from the outside loop and create a space, a wider space between the two tracks on the curve section. I don't know why that is, but visually it works better and looks better. And also, when the two trains are diverging or coming together as they reach the curves, it creates a very realistic, almost interesting experience in itself. It's very satisfying to watch. Now, tight curves is another thing to do with the track systems. Now, I can remember when I was a teenager, GUF and Lima both made very tight track systems that could fit literally on a small kitchen table. I think, and even Fleischmann, I think, even made 15-inch radius curves. And Merklin still do in their K track. And you could fit these layouts on a very small, remember, K track can be used in DC as well. You can fit these on a small table. And there was also preformed layouts, are a very good way to get into this. They also have tight curves. Some are made by Nock, Keebrey, Faller, and Lima even made a wonderful one back in the day that was very, very small. And don't forget the track mats by Hornby. You can actually start out with these, and that's kind of like what Ron was doing on this Tycho layout. And then you can expand that by making the scenery more realistic and so on and build it up. I've seen Hornby track mat that was scenic up, and you wouldn't know it was a Hornby track mat layout. It was so beautifully scenic, so realistically done with the shrubs and everything. And again, he used shrubbery and little woodland kind of things to hide hedges and bushes to hide the tight curves on the overhangs. So tight curves can be hidden also in tunnels and other things like that, or under road bridges. And don't have, yeah, if you're running a 15 rake express passenger train, sure. But very few of us have the space to do that on any layout. You'll be running basic box cars or goods vans. There's no problem with them. Use what you have, and there's ways around all these issues. You don't have to. After a while, you'll find that you're not bothered by the overhang of passenger cars on these tight curves if they can negotiate them. 6. Deep flanges on wheels are the work of the devil. No, this is not true at all. Now, there are deep flanges and there are deep flanges. What people call cookie cutter flanges will work on all Code 100 track. This is why they're still popular in Europe. You do not get derailments. If you look at the history of American model trains, right back to the beginning in HO, derailments are always mentioned. Why? Because of this constant need to have scale flanges. You never ever, or very rarely, in European or British double O or European HO, have the same angst regarding derailments. Why? Because the deeper flanges keep the trains on the track. They also compensate for a track that has moved over the decades or over the years or wasn't laid good in the first place. Deep flanges may be prototypically incorrect, and if you're running a slow shunting, highly detailed layout, they will stand out. But if you're just running regular trains, you won't notice them when they're going along the track. If they're often cast in dark metal. Now I know they have the RP25 wheel in America, which actually is a genius design, even though it has a low flange. It is held on the track by the way the geometry of the actual curve is, where the wheel meets the flange. And yeah, they work quite well. Even on my layout with its problems, I can get away with them. But I can't run anything really fast. If I want to run fast things, like express passenger trains, deep flanges are the way to go. They will clear every single frog by every proprietary maker. And I've got news for you. Now, I'm not talking about the really deep flanges that you get on the old Triang or Trix trains. I'm talking about, like, they'd be 2 millimeters at the max that have been built from the 70s on, like you get on Lima or Fleischmann or Roco and all these other makers. And they're fine. They work fine. In fact, I have replaced all the wheels on my American passenger stock with deep flange wheels. Why? Because I can run them at decent speeds without having them worried about jumping off the tracks. So deep flanges are not the work of the devil. Deep flanges can be your friend. It depends on how pedantic you are about the visual look of them. Remember, the purpose of model trains is to run them, not to look at them. That's a secondary thing. And then number 7, and finally, older equipment is not junk. Now, I see this all the time. I've actually seen comments on Facebook groups recently where someone in America said that Athearn Blue Box was a pile of crap. I can remember when I first saw an Athearn Blue Box model when I was a kid, and I was blown away by it. The double flywheels, the centrally mounted motor, and how it could crawl and just cruise over dead frog points at slow speeds. That is amazing. It's still excellent. Yeah, the models have something to be desired in detailing, but guess what? That's another part of the hobby that's missed out on. Detail them, fix them up, make them better. So this nonsense that old equipment is junk really annoys me. Like, if you look at the GUF Souchon motor, which is a lateral long motor that they built in the 1950s, It had an internal flywheel effect just by the sheer construction of the motor. That was, I don't think any motor has ever come close to it ever since. Unfortunately, the tooling was destroyed and they couldn't make them anymore. So if there's any Chinese motor manufacturers out there, can you please make a copy of the original GUF Sushan motor? And that thing goes back, what, 60, 70 years. The same thing with couplers. You know, you have to have all the latest couplers and everything. Yeah, I mean that's okay for prototypical, but if they couple the train and they work at speed, they're fine. And you can hide gaps by doing things like putting corridor connections in passenger coaches and so on. It's not an achievement to just spend money and open a box if that's your primary objective in the hobby. This is why I only read the old hobby magazines, because they show you how to build things on cardboard cereal boxes and things like that. It's not just about spending money in glorified magazines today, are glorified catalogs. So that's my 7 pet peeves at Mythbusters about the hobby. If you have any more or you disagree with me, let me know. But I think from all my years, this is a pretty solid list I've produced, and not every layout has to be absolute perfection. It's more important that it works and it's reliable rather than it becomes a mini version of the real world. Uh, because everything in this hobby is a compromise, and the compromise should always be in favor of enjoyment and not perfection. Thank you very much.